Welcome back for the 2023 lawn care season. Thank you so much for coming back and joining me on the channel. I know I've not been on here for a while, but it's been winter, and like most of us, I've been just trying to re-energize, get some other things done, and get ready for this year. Today, it is early February, but the snow has decided to melt. It's been a really off and on winter this year, I guess you could say. So the plots are uncovered. I thought I would walk around, show you a couple things that are interesting going on with that. Also, talk about the 2023 lawn care plan, what I have in store, or at least right now what I think I have in store. As you know, things always change as the season goes along. And also, we are moved out to our new property here, which we call Westbury Acres. So if you've been following along on my other channel, really appreciate it. I've had a lot of stuff going on here with the house during the winter, which we've been filming. And if you haven't checked that out, go ahead and check out my other channel if you want to see all about the build and what's going on with that stuff. First of all, let's just take sort of a bird's eye view here, what's going on with the plots overall, and then I want to talk about some of the color differences that I've been seeing during the winter. Just give you a general sense of how things are looking going into the spring coming up here in a couple months. Here we have the ryegrass, and overall you might say it looks pretty brown on the surface, and it does. It looks fairly dormant, but I'm going to show you a close-up here. This stuff is just waiting to pop out of the ground, and especially after you've had some snow cover, and that actually helps to insulate things. These warm days that we've been having, a couple nice 40, yesterday was over 50 degrees. These grasses are starting to think about getting ready to grow again, but the inconsistencies of our temperature won't really allow that to happen for a little while yet. Overall, I just want to show you the color of that. Let's move to the fescue. Same thing going on here. I've told you this last season that this sometimes acts a lot like a warm season grass. It prefers to be a little warmer than the rye or the bluegrass, and so it actually looks more like straw, more like a warm season grass would down south. Not as much green throughout and not as much growth happening as the ryegrass. Now we have the bluegrasses, which these have surprised me this season. This is one of the things that I wanted to show you. They have stayed very, very green overall during the winter time, and I just did a podcast a couple weeks ago, my first turf cast of the season with my good friend RD. I briefly mentioned that on the podcast, but I wanted to be able to show you, and so finally the snow is off of this now. But I had a few emails after that podcast as well that said that a few people had this bluegrass that I sell, and that it had stayed really, really green during the winter. It's the same thing that I am seeing with these bluegrasses. So it's holding a lot better color than the other two grass types in these plots. Also briefly, you might be wondering what's going on here. Actually, there's some weeds starting to grow already. This season though, I will be doing something with this, either with a fabric or something else to cover these up, but I need to get my irrigation lines in first because I don't want to have to tear that all up again. So I'm going to get my irrigation put in here, hopefully right around the beginning of spring, and then I will figure out these so I don't have to continue dealing with all these weeds all the time. All right, so now we get to the low cut plots, and these were just planted last fall, and this is some of the more interesting stuff that I wanted to show you. So this one right in front of us here is ryegrass, and just like the other plots, there's a lot of green starting to emerge underneath, and because it was cut lower, you don't have as much of that brown leaf tissue out on top of it, so it's looking more green than the taller plot. Same type of situation with the bluegrass here. This is not very mature at all, and bluegrass takes probably at least through the springtime to start to mature fully, so I'm gonna really be excited to see what this is going to do, but it's still holding all of that green color a lot better than some of the other ones. So here's the tall fescue, and this has been mowed this whole last fall at 3/4 of an inch. I was telling everybody last season that it doesn't look that much different at this height than the bluegrass does. It has a pretty similar leaf texture, but this is my elite fescue, and these newer cultivars, from what I'm seeing so far, we're gonna wait till we get through this next season, seem to be a lot more tolerant of a lot of different things, and so that's why I'm doing these tests, just to see, for those of you out there who maybe want to mow your fescue a little lower, or you maybe want to mow it really low like I am doing, just want to see what goes on with it. And then finally we get to one that has really surprised me, which is my fine fescue plot. This is straight fine fescue. I think it's 3 different types, and this of course still being mowed at 3/4 of an inch like everything else, and the color on this has held, just looks fantastic. So very similar to the bluegrass over here, but I would say this is more mature at this point, which is not surprising. But as far as overall green color, when you look at these plots, this one really stands out. So I think this is going to be an important grass for the future. It doesn't get a whole lot of talk, but it's resilient and you don't need to fertilize a whole lot, and there's a lot of different things about it that I think people might be missing out on certain situations, so we'll talk about that this season. Nothing else really out of the ordinary happening over here. This is the Kentucky 31 plot right through this section. So you can see that's pretty brown, just like the Elite fescue right next to it, and right next to that on the other side is my shade mix in full sun, which is looking good and a lot more green than the fescues at this point. Micro clover plot over here, and sorry for the fence, I will take this apart as we get into spring here so you can see a better look at it, but today I just didn't want to take this whole fence thing apart. But some green just starting to emerge in this. I've been very interested to see how it's going to come out of more of a dormant stage, and we'll see that in the next couple months. Also, nothing out of the ordinary happening on this larger ryegrass plot or that larger fescue plot over there. Just a lot of deer traffic right now. So as the ground gets mushy, they are starting to do some damage with that, but really nothing I can do on that part. Drought testing plots are all intact and looking good and ready to be put through some testing this season to see how these various different grass types and a couple of mono stands that I have in here are going to withstand some of the weather that we have, and we'll see. You never know, but usually it does get dry during the middle of summer at some point, and so we're gonna test that out this season. This is the future home of some warm season grass testing that I'm planning to do, and right now it just has some annual ryegrass put into this as a temporary cover, but we're looking for that this season. I haven't exactly figured out which types I'm going with, but that'll be in this section. Well, that wind's a little more brisk than I thought. I had to put a hat on here. Now let's talk about the front yard, and well, I guess I would say the future front yard, because I think definitely some major work is going to have to be done here in the spring. If you were paying attention to what happened last fall, we didn't get this planted exactly when I wanted to, but things just got delayed with getting all the final grading done and all that stuff. So I did what I could. I planted it probably right around the beginning of November, and we had a couple weeks of good weather, put down some frost blankets over top of it to try to protect everything, and those things just didn't end up holding. As soon as they got wet a couple times and we get our winds that are up here on the top of this hill, they all just ripped out of the stakes. And so we did put them down one more time. We double staked, we flipped it over and put double thickness on the actual edges where they got staked down. Nothing made any sort of difference with that. And so right now I want to show you where a couple of the blankets were for maybe 1 or 2 weeks extra compared to the first couple that came off, if that makes any sense. So you can definitely see it was working, but here's what it looks like right now. So I think there's a good chance that where those blankets were on there for an extra couple weeks, that grass may survive, but there's really no grass next to it because those initial ones that came off about 2 weeks into it, after it had just sprouted, we got a super hard freeze around 14 or 15 degrees. And after that, I saw everything else pretty much just wither away. So I will keep you updated as it gets into spring what this actually looks like and what did survive, just so you know on a really late seed what might happen. My plan for this is that I need to get irrigation in here. I've got about 5,000 square feet marked off for my initial lawn that I want to put in. So I need to get irrigation put in for that because I want to put ryegrass in here, cut it low just like I did at my old house, and make it look really nice in front of the building. We'll talk about a spring seeding. I don't really have much of a choice here when I have this bare dirt, so something's gonna have to be planted here in the spring, which I'm just gonna start on the yard and see what happens. I did a spring seeding last year down towards the road, but I didn't take care of it like I planned to take care of this one, so I think it can be successful in the right situation, but stay tuned to find out. So one thing that I thought maybe I was gonna be able to do with the front yard was just overseed what I had, because I do have some grass that I think is gonna come back. But if you see here where we put in our water lines up to the building, they told me that definitely all of this stuff is going to settle, and you can see a couple sinkholes here, one with where the lines for the water were going, and then also the septic tank needs to have some soil added around that too. Back side of the building, this is currently a muddy mess, but we had originally planned on this being a turnaround spot for trailers and some parking area, just if there needed to be some extra parking or anything. So that's still the plan, but I would like to put some grass in here as much as possible. I know as far as on the actual trails themselves, which you can see here, I have a few wood chips put down. I will keep probably wood chips on those as far as the actual turnaround goes, but everywhere else I'd like to plant some grass, and even if it gets worn down from some vehicle traffic, that's okay. So I'm Not decided completely on grass type over here, but definitely have a lot of planting to do, and I'm looking forward to that. My plan for all of this big field area back here is pretty much just to leave things native as is right now. I have been experimenting with mowing some trails, and I want to do a couple experiments out here this season as well on this actual prairie type grass that's out here. We'll talk about that as we get to it this season and see if anything comes of that that's interesting to show for video. But this trail right here in the middle, one other thing that I would like to do is I would like to have a grass trail down to our camp area. So the camp area from here is probably another 500 feet, maybe a little farther. And so I'd like to have at least one trail down through here where the dogs can walk, and it would be kept nice and it would be turf instead of this prairie type grass. And so that's something that I want to work on this season. Then I want to make sure we don't use it as an ATV trail and tear it all up. So probably thinking about a bluegrass again, because it's going to have to be something that can go dormant in the summer if that's what it needs to be, and can come back in the fall and spring but still have some good turf cover there. Well, down here at our camp section now, you can see here the fine fescue and ryegrass mix that is up here on this little sort of ridge, and that is looking really good. Over here you can see I've been working on getting a whole bunch of firewood ready for this season. This is still one of my favorite places on the property for sure. Not a whole lot to see down here right now, except like I said, this is really looking good. Down here in the lower bowl section where I have planted my shade mix, that is still pretty much all covered with snow at this point. Over here on this side where I did some planting last season and where I will be doing some dense shade testing, that's sort of a mix of snow right now, and grass is just starting to come out of that too. Not a lot to show you down here, but there will be plenty coming up this season as far as shade content and different things going on down in this section. Now, one thing that I had planned to do this winter was a dormant seeding test, and I was going to use this section right here and tear up that ground and do a full dormant seed, and then this section was one that I planted late. It's really thin. There's a lot of spots that needed some work, so I was going to do a comparison of those two. However, we really did not have a chance this winter where we got consistent cold, consistent snow. It just keeps going up and down where things melt off and it warms up. And so this isn't a really good scenario to give you a great idea of a proper dormant seed, where you would put this down, let the snow go on top of it for the winter season, keep it frozen, and then let it come out in the springtime. But I've been yo-yoing up and down with temperatures, so it hasn't been a good time to actually do that. Please leave a comment down below if there's some content you'd like me to film in the next couple weeks or talk about on the podcast. So if there's a question that you have or something that you wanted me to try to cover, go ahead and leave that in the comment down below, and I'll see what I can do about some of these topics. Also, stay tuned very soon before the season gets started, at least here, for a preseason sale that I'll be running on my website. I'm working on a couple different details with that, but stay tuned for that too. We're doing a few more podcasts coming up, hopefully a live stream. Remember that if you want to participate in those live streams, you can become a member of the channel. As always, I appreciate you watching. I hope you enjoyed today's video. We'll see you next time.